Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, today will be uh, the last few masail in Kitab al-Ijara. Ijara has to do with rentals. Either you renting or hiring a person, you renting a facility to use or something similar, or you're hiring somebody to do a job for you. Here, they're speaking about if you're hiring a person, okay? You either getting them to make you something, okay? So they are making something, or they are doing a service for you that does not involve making something. And here they want to speak about if the person who has asked, so let's say you come and you hire, for example, say you have an agreement with a tailor to sew you a thobe. Here he's making something. He or she is making something. An example of the second category, let's say you hire somebody at the airport to carry your bags and you've agreed on a price, the porter, for example. So the mas'ala they want to speak about is here you've agreed, okay, on the price, you've agreed on the service that will be provided. Now, let's say you, as the person who's asking for the service, has not paid. Is this person, meaning the one providing the service, allowed to hold back the product until you pay or not? As for somebody who's making something, so if they're making, for example, your thobe, or they are doing work on an item which is physical. So here we could say, for example, let's say you had you wanted to fix your car and you got some work done on it and you not paying your bill. Is this tailor or is this mechanic allowed to hold your car until you pay or not? As for the person making something which is going to be tangible, the Hanafi books, they say he's allowed to hold this product that he made for you until you pay in full. So let's say, for example, you asked for a thobe and you agreed on $200 and you paid him a deposit of $100, and the next week you saw him, he wasn't yet finished, and you gave him another $50 and you're still $50 outstanding. And he's finished the thobe and you come to collect. He is well within his rights to say that he will not hand over this thobe until you pay in full. Okay? And as for somebody who's providing a service, meaning not making something new, so let's say the porter at the airport, or let's say you got somebody to the porter at the airport, for example. If you have a dispute when it comes to payment, here they'll tell you obviously he's entitled to his pay or his wage according to the effort he made. However, he's not allowed to hold your bags. So he can't say, I'm holding your 10 bags until you pay up. No. However, he will get his right. And remember, they're talking about things they're talking about transactions long ago which were not as sophisticated as today. So they'll say there's another way for him to put a case forward and ask for his rights, but it's not by holding the product or not by holding your possessions. Why? Because he only provided a service. He had nothing to do with bringing this thing into fruition or into existence. Obviously, one can debate back and forth. And the main thing to note is if you are somebody hiring another person for a service, make sure you've agreed and make sure you pay. And if somebody is hiring you to do something, it could be to teach or whatever it may be, make sure that you cover your payment, you cover what needs to be given to you, etc., in order to avoid dispute. So they mention this. Thereafter, they go on to mentioning specifically about a house or any property. We've mentioned a few of the masail regarding it, and they want to finish off by mentioning a few important ones. They say, as for a person who's agreed to rent a property, let's say a house or a room or a warehouse or a factory, whatever it may be, if this person agrees on that contract, let's say here's the house, you tell the person that we've agreed on monthly rental of 1,000, and you started this contract in January. And let's say in February, you're still moving in and you only start using it in March. Here we'll say the default is even if you never use it in this period of time, as long as your agreement started there, you must pay the rent. As for if you manage to negotiate an agreement, and this is a rule you must remember. Generally, when we're speaking about these disputes, we speaking about two parties which are arguing over something. So we go to a default ruling. However, if you have framework or if you have an agreement between yourselves, then you don't have to go to the default ruling. So let's say, for example, you tell this landlord, you say that, okay, I know you want to give me this property, but January, February, March, I'm away and I'm unable to pay the rent. And I'll start paying, if you allow me, from April when I start using it. If he agrees or if she agrees, there's no problem. Why? Because you've agreed on it. This we're talking about a dispute. So if there's a dispute here, we'll say that from your time of agreement, regardless of whether you used it or not, you should pay the rental. Thereafter, they mention terms for termination of contract. And this is from the tenant, the one who is renting. There's a few different ways a person can get out of their contract. Firstly, we must remember that once you've entered into these contracts which are binding, without a valid reason, you cannot come out of it. So let's say, for example, here in this property, you've agreed 1 year, okay? And you started January, February, March, April. April, you said that, you know what, this is not for me. I don't really want it. Whatever your reasoning is, you have to see out this contract. If that landlord, from the goodness of his or her heart, said, you know what, we'll terminate your contract here, no problem, we have no issue. However, if they say, no, you are the one who signed the contract for 1 year, whether you use it or not, or whatever your issue is, that's not our problem. You must pay the rent till the end of the year. You have to stick to the contract. However, there may be instances where you are allowed to ask or seek termination. One of them being if there's something wrong with the actual property or the actual item you're renting, and this aib or this defect affects the main performance or the main benefit or one of the main benefits you wanted from this item. So I'll give you an example. If the house that you're renting, when you moved in, you realize that there's leaks in the roof, and if you're in a cold country, the heating is not working and you weren't aware of it when you signed the contract. Here we would say those are valid grounds for you to go to the tenant, to the landlord, and say, even though we agreed on this year, these are the defects, so X, Y, and Z is not working, and I want to move out. I want to terminate my contract. Shar'an, you are well within your rights to do that. Why? Because you rented the house in order for you to use it, and the main benefit is not being achieved. You can't use it without the heating and with the roof leaking, etc. What happens if, for example, the 3 months you stayed in it were everything was working, and then the 4th month everything went wrong, for example, natural disaster, whatever it may be. Here, obviously, you would have paid for these 3 months. If you're on a yearly contract, we'll work out these 3 months rental. And if you terminate from here, you're well within your rights to terminate. Similarly, when it comes to a car, for example, let's say you've agreed when you're picking up your car from the rentals, hiring places, you have hired a car and obviously you want to get from place to place. This vehicle must be in good working order. If it starts giving you trouble and you've got engine problems, whatever it may be, major issues, you are well within your rights to phone them. If you need another car or they're offering a replacement, you can take it. And if not, you can terminate with them. They must refund you and you can move on. So here we'll say the contract, once you've entered, is binding. However, there may be certain instances where you have legitimate ground to terminate. And if you don't have any legitimate ground or any legs to stand on, however, if the other party from the goodness of their heart wants to terminate, as we took in iqala when you come to buying and selling, here we'll say that that's also permissible. Last mas'ala to touch on when it comes to this, they speak about what happens if one of the transacting parties had to die. So let's say this is you here, and this is the person who owns the house. And you renting the house from this person, and they had to die. Do we say that the contract which was between you has now come to an end because he died? Or are these rights, huquq, inherited by the heirs or not? Here you've got two opinions amongst the scholars. And when you go to these two opinions, you can understand why, who said what. So for example, those who say that it becomes null, this contract. So whatever agreement you had, let's say you had a 1-year contract to stay in the house and he died 6 months later and you got 6 months left. Those who say that that contract no longer stands, they'll say now let the heirs do whatever they want with it. And similarly, the opposite if true, if the is true, if the person had to rent, then they'll say that he could pay the rent. Now we don't know who'll pay the rent, etc. So that contract comes to an end. That's one opinion. Second opinion is no. We will carry on with the agreement that we had with this party and his children or whoever they may be. They will uphold. They will uphold this contract up to the time agreed upon. When you think about it, I think we could have a nuanced answer according to what's being rented, according to whether it's short term, meaning according to the time of the rental, etc. And I think you could be able to gauge and take it from there. So sometimes, Allahu Alam, it may be of more benefit to take this opinion, and sometimes maybe of more benefit to take that opinion. I give you an example. If, let's say you had an agreement with this person for a house, and then you had to die, everyone will die one day or another. Those who would argue that the contract stands, they'll say, okay, what about his family? You're just going to kick them out of the house. What are you going to do with them? And you've also heard the other side of the story. How are they going to pay the other 6 months? So we'll say, we'll look at what's being rented. We'll look at a person who's renting. Are they capable or have they left means behind in order to pay? And we'll carry on from there. And I think we've learned it as a mas'ala. As for each case, we could look at it on a case-by-case basis. Allahu A'lam. And that brings you to the end of most of the main masail in Kitab al-Ijara. Inshallah, in the next lesson, we'll start off with Shuf'ah, inshallah. And moving on to Bulugh al-Maram. The previous lessons, we went over the beginning of the chapter of Tahara, Babul Miyah. Babul Miyah is a chapter of water, and we spoke about the different ahadith. Inshallah, today we're moving on to what's called Babul Aniyah. Aniyah is plural of ina. Ina is speaking about a pot or a vessel used to capture water. So in our terms, a cup would fall under this, a bucket would fall under this, a dish would fall under this, etc. Why do they mention this? Because after telling you the ruling of water, you've got to store this water somewhere. So they start giving you the masail with regards to these vessels for storing water. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah mentions the hadith of Hudhayfah ibn al-Yaman radiallahu anhu, where he says the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, لا تشربوا في آنية الذهب والفضة ولا تأكلوا في صحافها فإنها لهم في الدنيا ولكم في الآخرة. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, don't drink from the vessels, meaning cups and dishes and or whatever is similar, glasses, that are made from gold and silver. It says لا تأكلوا لا تشربوا. And here, when you learn fiqh and usul fiqh, they'll tell you that an order, there's an order and a prohibition. When the Messenger ﷺ gives you an order, he's telling you to do something. And this order generally is for wujub, for something which is compulsory. And if he gives you a prohibition, he says, La, for example, La tashrabu, don't do this. This is a prohibition and it's closer, or it stands for tahrim, something being haram. And then from there, you'll find, let me put this here. So you've got orders, which are known as amr. It's very important to understand Islamic text. And you've got prohibitions, which are under nahi. Okay? Amr is an order, nahi is a prohibition. Now, generally when you hear an order in the Quran or the Sunnah, they'll tell you that it stands for wujub, meaning something which is compulsory. And when you hear nahi, prohibition, it's for tahrim, i.e. haram. However, this ruling may be lightened. So for example, there may be an order, however, it's lightened and it comes to what we could call sunnah or mustahab or nafil. And at times there may be a prohibition, however, it could be lightened to that which is makruh or disliked, not haram. What makes it lighter? You learn is different reasons. One of the reasons is, for example, if the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered us to do something, but then he himself ordered us not to do something. However, he himself did it on occasion. I'll give you an example. He said, or we ordered to drink while sitting. Okay. However, on one occasion, or let's say very rarely, at times, on one occasion it's recorded, the Messenger ﷺ drank while standing. So here we'll say that it's not haram to drink standing, however, it's disliked. What lightened that prohibition? The fact that the Messenger ﷺ did it. Why would he do it? To show his ummah that at times, if a person needs to out of necessity, it is permissible. Similarly, for example, at times the Messenger ﷺ may use a wording which implies that this would be compulsory, however, due to difficulty, it's still emphasized, however, not compulsory. Example of siwak, cleaning the teeth, he says, لولا أن أشق على أمتي لأمرتهم بالسواك. One riwayah مع كل وضوء, the other one مع كل صلاة. If it wasn't for the difficulty and burden, I would have ordered my ummah to make siwak, meaning it would have been compulsory to make siwak at every wudu or at every salah. So if you look at the hadith, it's got an order, but what made it lighter? The fact that the Messenger ﷺ didn't make it compulsory out of fear of burdening the ummah. So getting back to this hadith, Messenger ﷺ is saying, La tashrabu, don't drink in vessels, cups, glasses made from gold and silver, or gold or silver. And here we'll say that this nahi is for tahrim, to show that it's haram, not allowed. And there's nothing, or there's no other ahadith or instances that allowed a person to do it. Here we're talking not in necessity. Remember, darura, anything that is haram could become halal. Then he says, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا فِي صِحَافِهَا. Don't eat from the plates. So you got a plate, you got a dish, and we could say something similar For example, your forks and knives. Uh, Here, if they're made from gold and silver, the Messenger ﷺ is telling you not to eat from them or with them. Why? One of the reasons, فَإِنَّهَا لَهُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَلَكُمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ. It's for them, meaning the people who are not Muslims in this world, they will enjoy it. And it's for you, O believers, in the Akhirah, in the hereafter. From this hadith, we take many different masail. First is, even though this hadith implies that, or is speaking about eating and drinking, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah puts it under the heading of, or puts it under the chapter of water, because he wants to speak about, are you allowed to gather your water for wudu in a gold cup, for example, a gold a vessel or a silver vessel? Are you allowed to do that or not? The scholars, when it comes to interpreting this hadith, everybody agrees that as for the actual eating and the drinking, using gold and silver, from gold and silver, then that is not allowed. It's haram. And then when it comes to what's called isti'mal, isti'mal is usage. Usage is not eating or drinking directly from it. However, it's using it. So, for example, if you've got a gold pen, you're not eating, you're not drinking, etc. Why this difference of opinion? Because here they're saying, what's the reasoning for the Messenger ﷺ prohibiting this? Some say it's purely because of food and drink, and the fact that, for example, the poor people, it's not befitting for a person to break their hearts to show them such taraf and such a lavish lifestyle. Another opinion is it brings arrogance and pride into the heart. Then there are those who go further and say it's also according to isti'mal, even the usage of these things, for example, a gold pen, etc., is impermissible. Or to have decor where you are using it. So, for example, they'll tell you to sit on a gold chair or something which is similar. They'll tell you it's not allowed. Why? Because it brings kibr, arrogance, and pride into the heart. And there's those who say that it's only to do with eating and drinking from these vessels. Based on this, if a person had to gather the water for wudu out of no reason, in a gold a gold vessel or gold bucket or silver, for example, is their wudu correct or not? Here they're not eating or drinking from it. Those who say that you're not allowed isti'mal, also they'll tell you that it's not allowed. Okay, those who say you're allowed to use it because you're not eating and drinking from it, here they'll tell you it's allowed. As for those who tell you it's not allowed, again they're going to differ as to, is your wudu correct or not? So they tell you it's not allowed. Are you sinful for doing it, but your wudu is correct? Or the fact that you did something not allowed, your wudu doesn't stand in the first place? And you find this long difference of opinion in fiqh based on people's school of thought, etc. What we can learn from this hadith is a Muslim is somebody who's humble. A Muslim is somebody who doesn't have to show and boast and be attached to the dunya. And as for those things which are permissible by the hadith, for example, women to wear gold jewelry, etc., here we'll say that if this is a general ruling and you're counting everything, those are specific hadith which allow women to use gold and silver, etc., to adorn themselves, and men to use silver if need be, for example, in a ring, etc. Wallahu a'lam. So that's why Ibn Hajar rahimahullah mentions